I bought a house when I was 26 and fell immediately into poverty.
That's right, we have a whole playroom for the kid. But I'm eating pot noodle for lunch because that's what we can afford.
House poor seems like an oxymoron. Like, how could you be poor if you literally own a house? Isn't that an investment? Didn't you need to have a lot of money in the first place to buy one? Yes and no to both of those questions. Home ownership is this weird thing because on one hand, it's seen as a clear path for the middle class to become financially secure. On the other hand, home ownership has been incredibly romanticized. It has been framed as the American dream, complete, of course, with a white picket fence.
The attractive home of John and Margaret Bryant, the home they've always dreamed of, the happiest investment they have ever made.
What happens is because buying a house is seen as a blanket good investment, even if that's not always the case, and because we have romanticized the heck out of home ownership in our culture, we end up with a world where people are throwing themselves into crazy debt, overwhelming expenses, and hurting themselves financially in order to buy a house. AKA, they are becoming house poor. So in this video, I want to dissect the reality of being house poor, how the hidden costs of home ownership sneak up on buyers, and how maybe, just maybe, we should be rethinking the dream of home ownership. I'll also be sharing my 2 cents on the renting versus buying debate. Spoiler, I am happily a renter right now. By the way, if you are new here, I'm Cara and I make videos on the intersection of money, media, and culture. If that sounds like your cup of tea, be sure to subscribe and check out my video on the golden handcuffs trap, which I think you'll really like. If you like this video, go watch it after you watch this one. And you know how our homes are such private sanctuaries for us, whether we rent or buy them? Like, we wouldn't want to go out on the streets and announce to everyone what your personal address is, right? Unless you're like gunning to have a skin suit made of you. Maybe that's your thing. Privacy is so important for peace of mind and safety. I'm a very private person. I don't need people knowing very much about me. And that is a huge part as to why I absolutely love today's sponsor, Delete Me. I've talked a lot about Delete Me on this channel before because I genuinely love their service and I really think that everybody should have it. Basically, your personal information is being sold every day to data brokers, which means that weirdos on the internet or nosy people you barely know in your life, they can find things like your physical address, your phone number, your email, your relatives' information, your property tax information, your social media. It is all out there for them to find. What Delete Me does, though, is they find and then they remove that private information so that you are better protected. Having your data out there is not just a matter of feeling creeped on, it can be a huge financial risk too when you consider things like identity theft. Delete Me is a great service to get yourself. Through them, you'll get quarterly privacy reports that show you what personal information of yours they found and removed on your behalf. And Delete Me is honestly a great gift to get someone in your life, especially older relatives who might be more at risk for falling for scams that weaponize their personal information. Being able to control your digital identity is increasingly important, and Delete Me helps you do just that. If you want your own detailed report and to make sure your personal information stays private, right now you can use the code CARA, that's CARA, for 20% off. That's code CARA at joindeleteme.com/CARA, which I'll also link down below. Go check out Delete Me today to protect your data, and thank you so much to Delete Me for sponsoring today's video. So tell me if this is relatable or if I'm just being a nut job who is addicted to scrolling. But something that I really enjoy doing is looking at gorgeous and often pricey Zillow homes.
Exciting.
I need a new fantasy.
Then you need Zillow. Zillow.com.
Literally, I will just bop around from city to city on the app and look at the pretty pictures. Like, here are a few that I have saved recently. This $1.7 million townhouse in Brooklyn, beautiful wood floors, so much charm. Or this $800,000 house in Chicago, just blocks from the water. No joke, if it weren't for Chicago's winters and my weak butt cannot handle that anymore, I would move to Chicago. I would totally do it. It's not even funny. But alas, I am weak. And I promise that this is the last of Cara's dream home tour and that there is a point coming, but this $2.3 million home in Pittsburgh that honestly I just want for the greenhouse alone, because look at this thing. I'm not good at keeping plants alive, but I will become a green thumber for this house. I swear. I also swear to stop using the term green thumber, just because it sounds weird, it sounds off. But why show you all of these expensive saved homes of mine? Besides the obvious of we all secretly love to look at these, right? I I know I'm not alone here. The reason is because, crazily enough, I realized after doing the math that some of these beautiful homes I look at on Zillow, I could technically afford. And when I say afford in these Zillow scrolling moments, I'm meaning that I could technically scrape together enough for a down payment and I have enough monthly income to cover the zestimated monthly costs. And this is where a lot of people stop the home buying thought process, if they even get that far at all. Those two data points alone, affording the down payment and having enough money coming in to afford the base monthly costs, might be enough for some people to pull the trigger on what tends to be the biggest purchase of our lives. And yes, that is baffling. And maybe some people out there think sucks to suck dummies for anyone who buys a house just because of that. But look, I get why this happens. It is so exciting to realize that you could possibly buy a house of your dreams, to see the very top of what you could potentially afford. I feel that way when I do my brief calculation on a dream home on Zillow, even though, as I'll talk about in a second, buying one of those houses would be a financial disaster for me. Knowing that you could technically buy a house, whether it's a dream house or just any house, frankly, can easily suck us into fantasies that are fueled by cultural norms and romanticization, lessons past generations have drilled into us, or desires for flexing to those around us. But the reality of becoming house poor should be top of mind in these situations. Being house poor means spending about 30% or more of your income on housing expenses, and it can lead to 1, having little to no financial wiggle room, where once you'd have leftover money going to savings, emergency funds, now you have everything going to your house. 2, your financial stakes are so much higher now. Any kind of issue, whether it's a lost job, a water pipe that you have to fix, popped tires on your car, if you are house poor, those issues could have massive financial consequences because you are living in a far more vulnerable place day to day. And lastly, you will be stressed. Being house poor can lead you to essentially living paycheck to paycheck, which is always a more stressful place to be. Yes, you can feel blessed for having a roof over your head, but you're gonna feel stressed about whether the roof can stay over your head in the first place. No doubt that scrolling through Zillow, attending open houses, even just looking through an Architectural Digest magazine, it's gonna stir some strong desires for jumping the gun and buying a house. I know, because I have certainly felt that way, but there is so much more than meets the eye when it comes to buying a house. In other words, hidden costs. In 1986, a Steven Spielberg comedy starring Tom Hanks came out called The Money Pit, and the entire plot revolved around a young couple buying their dream home only to discover the whole thing is falling apart. The house quickly becomes a money pit, thus the title, which refers to something like a house that is an ongoing drain on your wallet.
They've got good jobs, fabulous futures, a magnificent new home that they bought for a song. Who says they can't have it all?
While hopefully no one experiences the extreme levels of buyer's remorse captured in that movie, I'm willing to bet almost every first-time homebuyer experiences shock at the hidden costs of a house. It's not just the down payment and mortgage that you're paying. You also have to throw in property taxes, which can get higher every single year, even after you have fully paid off your home. You have to factor in insurance, HOA fees, maintenance, and repairs. For maintenance alone, the typical advice is to assume that it'll cost 1 to 2% of the home's purchase price every single year. So if you bought the house for $300,000, you should expect to spend $3,000 to $6,000 a year just on maintenance. A good example of this is this woman I found online who talked about all of the random things that popped up in her new house and that were draining her bank account.
Don't really understand how much homes cost until you own one. We had a woodpecker problem. The most recent thing that happened is we found extensive termite damage in our kitchen. Cost of a home does not stop when you buy it because things keep happening and happening that you have to deal with.
I know we're not at the renter versus buyer portion of the video yet, but I just gotta say, it is those moments where I am so grateful I can call apartment maintenance for any issues I have, because I am many things, but I am not a home repair kind of gal. I am willfully ignorant in that department. There's actually a pertinent quote here that goes something like, rent is the max you'll pay per month and a mortgage is the minimum you will pay per month. Fortunately, things like Zillow's monthly payment calculator are helping improve visibility into the hidden costs of a home. That being said, there is a whole other layer of hidden costs that come with a home that can throw you deeper into being house poor. The hidden costs, if you will. Very creative nomenclature. But these hidden costs include things like lifestyle inflation. When you buy a house, you normally move into a place that is bigger than wherever you are renting, and with more space means buying more furniture, more decorating, more couches, more carpets, more shelves, aka money, money, money. You don't have to furnish that extra space, of course, but you're gonna feel a whole lot more pressure to do so with every square footage that you add on. You're gonna see inspiration on TikTok and Pinterest and HGTV, and your wallet is gonna shrink with every extra inch of your house. Or you could end up in the classic house poor state of owning a house, but not being able to furnish said house.
A win is a win. A win is a win. I don't care what y'all say, a win is a win.
That right there is being house poor in a nutshell. I would also argue that house poor can go beyond being money poor. You're also at risk of becoming time and energy poor. Have hobbies, love travel, enjoy weekends to yourself. You might have to say goodbye to a lot of that once you own a house. Obviously, it's not like you're suddenly gonna lose all of your time and energy, but say that you have a lawn around your new house. Now, every weekend, you might have to be out there taking care of it. Or maybe you want to do a whole remodel of the house yourself. A friend of mine did that, and she basically had to dedicate every weekend for a year on that project. Now you might hear all of this and still be thinking, so what? If you're house poor, you still own a house, and that is an investment. So what? You gotta cut back. Overall, it's a good thing. That to me sounds a whole lot like the older generation's mindset of you can never go wrong with a house. Never? The kids from Monster House would beg to differ. But here's my hot take. A house is not always an investment, specifically if you are living in that house. Because when a house is your primary residence, I think that you should only ever think about it as a place to live, not as a financial vehicle. Sure, it might appreciate in value over time, but that appreciation is only theoretical until you sell the house. And even then, you still need to live somewhere. If you want to live in that same area, you're going to have to buy in the same housing market that has gone up over time. Plus, you have transaction costs like real estate agent fees, closing costs, moving expenses that can eat into those gains. This isn't to say that buying a home is always a bad idea. It is not. It's just the value of homeownership is not the black and white answer that we'd like it to be. It's true that historically homeownership has been a path to wealth. Brookings Institute writes, quote, since the mid-20th century, the US has primarily relied on homeownership as a strategy for middle-income households to build wealth. For households in the 3 middle-income quintiles, home equity is the single largest financial asset, representing between 50 and 70% of net wealth. But it is also true that being house poor can make it so hard to build savings, to cover bills, and invest in your retirement. And here is the kicker that no one wants to talk about because it goes against everything that we are told as Americans. And that is that you will probably grow your wealth faster by taking whatever money would have gone into home ownership and investing it into something like the S&P 500 instead. And I can already feel you through the screens. I can feel you people jumping up and wanting to fight me. I'm sure you do, and I'm sure that you have some story about how your parents bought a house in the Bay Area in the 90s for $300,000 and now it's quadrupled in value in the last 3 decades. And they couldn't have done that in the market, you might tell me. But not every real estate market has grown like the Bay Area has. If you bought a house somewhere in Detroit, Michigan or Gary, Indiana, you would not have seen that same kind of growth. You might even have a house worth less nowadays. Plus, say that your parents did put their 20% down payment money into the stock market instead of a Bay Area house in the 90s. From the mid-90s to now, the S&P 500 has grown at around 10% a year on average, meaning that their $60,000 down payment would would have grown into over $1 million. And that doesn't include a single penny from monthly mortgage payments, property taxes, fees, maintenance, any of that stuff that is associated with owning a house. If you added that into the investments, you would be looking likely at over $3 million at least. Again, I am not saying any of this to discourage someone from buying a home. Owning a home can be an incredible lifestyle choice to make as long as you are not pushing yourself into being house poor. But the reason that it has been such a huge winner for people's finances in the past is because having a home forces you to save. You have to pay your mortgage. It's like a mandatory savings account that you now have. But if you can push yourself to invest without a house pressuring you to do so, I think that renting can be an incredible option for building wealth. You're so much more flexible, so that means you can more easily chase career opportunities that boost your income, and you can reduce your risk of unexpected expenses that could push you deeper into being house poor. It's just that you have to make sure that whatever extra money would have gone into owning a home, and now doesn't have to because you're renting, will instead go to investments. I think that the way that buying a home is portrayed in our culture is similar to how marriage is portrayed. Think of a rom-com and how it probably ends with a wedding, as if the wedding itself is the final destination. Weddings are seen as this visual shorthand symbol for a fulfilling companionship, love, and building a life. Because the reality is, trying to quickly depict those abstract concepts is not an easy task. If you want people in a 30-second ad or a 90-minute movie to quickly shortcut to those very complex concepts, you gotta throw them a motif. Unfortunately, we as audiences and consumers of culture, we can distort that motif as the goal itself, leading us to throw crazy money on the wedding of our dreams, when really we want the life and love of our dreams, not the financial extravaganza. Same thing happens with a home. We see the motif of a just sold house sign in a movie as a visual symbol of success and security and respect, but we have to start separating those associations in our mind because it makes us too vulnerable for falling for the trappings of being house poor. In our pursuit of looking or feeling successful, we might bite off a little more than we can financially chew and end up screwing our future selves over. Having a house, it can be fun, but being house poor is certainly not. But what do you think? Do you have any experience with being house poor yourself, or do you know someone who is? And where do you fall on the debate of buying versus renting? Let me know your thoughts down below and what topics you want to see me cover next. Go watch my golden handcuffs video if you want to see more videos like this one. I think you'll really enjoy that one. A huge thank you to those who support the channel on Patreon and buy me a coffee, and thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.